Nimmt auf?
Ja.
Hallo. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to our second video devlog. We are Boys Love Plus, BR Plus for short, and we are indie narrative game developers.
I'm Felix.
And I'm Rohan. As you can see by these beautiful dividers in the back, we are in an office again. Germany is currently under its second lockdown, but we are allowed to enter the university again under certain restrictions. And we are currently alone in this office, which is why we're allowed to remove our masks. Usually we would share this office with another indie team. They're called Indieburg. They're really cool people, and if you'd like, you can check them out. We'll put a link to their homepage in the description box below. The topics for today. We'll look back at what happened since our last devlog from August. Then we'll take a really spontaneous deep dive into an issue we were confronted with, Brassica back then. Afterwards, we'll update you on the progress of our latest project, EGOLOGIC. And then we'll tell you about what we're currently working on, and afterwards, what our future plans are.
On July 31st, we released a small update to Brassica with some changes to the first two acts, and with those updates we already released statements on what changed and why, but we would like to explain in a little more detail what happened and what we learned, because this was an issue that we hadn't expected and that we had to deal with for the first time. Okay, some context. Because Brassica was part of EGOLOGIC's bundle for racial justice and equality, a lot of new people played it and got a lot of new feedback. And some of that was criticism that it played into harmful stereotypes of people of color, which came as a surprise to us because we, of course, don't support such harmful stereotypes in media and in general. So what exactly was this criticism? It's mainly about Ode, one of her characters, and that he played into the stereotype of the black man who's always big and muscular and angry and ignorant, and this wasn't helped by the fact that, especially in the beginning, one of the other characters is relentlessly poking fun at him and not showing him in the best light, which turned out to be kind of ironic then that we added this game to the bundle for racial justice and equality. But yeah, as I said, we want to explain a little on what was going on, what our thoughts were, and what we learned and changed.
So what we thought as creators about the topic. So initially we planned to have two romanceable characters in Brassica. One would present the perfect Prince Summer you would encounter in the shoujo genre, and the other would be the brutish, kind of dumb guy you could find in the bara genre. Well, this shows in their names. We have Hans of Otome and Ode of Bara. If you ever wondered how to pronounce these names, that's how we thought they could be pronounced. And the twist with these two is that Hans seems like the perfect gentleman at first, but he really doesn't care about a perfect track record when he isn't politically motivated. And you have Ode, who seems brutish and kind of dumb at first, but then he turns out to be the most sensitive and artistic one from among our characters in the game. Ode is also the case of someone who has grown used to being bullied from his experience in his past. Opposite to this, Hans dishes out provocations all the time because of his own insecurities. This makes Ode a really good target for Hans, especially in the beginning of the story where they don't know each other yet. And so we have the holy constellation of the nerd versus the Chad, but unfortunately our heroes learn to redeem themselves with the help of our protagonist and you as the player eventually in the story.
So that was what our plan was for the characters and how we saw them while writing the story and the dialogue. And through this feedback we realized that there was a gap between who we thought these characters were and how they came across when you first meet them. And especially in Ode's case, because you don't actually get to learn much about him from his perspective until a little later in the game. So your first impression of him is very severely colored by what Hans says about him, which isn't actually who he is. So in this update we changed some of the dialogue to make Oat a little more confident and speak up and not just let every comment from Hans slide.
Okay, so that's the psychological and interpersonal side of the issue, but why is Oat literally dark-skinned, Hans white as a paper and saffron brown as a biscuit? So as the visual character designer of our little team, I wanted to design a cast which is diverse and choose color tones which move away from the fair default skin tone you see so much in Japanese manga and anime inspired media like visual novels are. In the end I picked the skin colors depending on what they mean to me in regards to the character's traits. So we have Saffron, who's brown because he's very much inspired by Indian culture and Buddhist views. And then we have Hans, who is white because he's inspired by fantastical beauty standards of Min in shoujo manga and anime, the stereotype of the prince hailing from a western country. And Oat is dark because I wanted to break with the default representation of black characters in mainstream media. I wanted to see a dark-skinned character who isn't a macho or disloyal. Another important factor here is our background as creators, because we both grew up in German cities. Yeah, there's a difference between like a small town and a city, and cities are more diverse. Where we grew up rather colorblind to skin tones, and I don't want to say that Germany is kind of a paradise for minorities. We have our own history, people might have heard, and that's different from the US, because I think many of our readers are from the US, or like we have an international audience, and it's just that racist people here in Germany, they're more focused on people from certain countries who are also majority white.
So what we learned with this, especially as people who release games for an international audience, is that we have to be a bit careful with how what you write, because most people who play our games probably won't have the same background that we have. And at the time we weren't aware that what we wrote would be uncomfortable or hurtful to other people. And of course, it's not what we want our games to be, so going forward we'll definitely try to catch these problems before they happen and make sure that such insensitive issues aren't part of our games. And we're thankful for any constructive criticism that tells us when something we did was wrong or plays into stereotypes that we don't want to reinforce.
So in August we made the previous devlog, and we took a break from actual BI Plus work somewhat and prioritized our individual freelance work. Also, Felix was away for some time from late July to late August, which didn't change much considering our home office situation back then. Then we were slowly getting back to EGOLOGIC towards the end of August. In the first September weeks, we put our freelance work to the side and focused on VR Plus work again. We had some long meetings, like overhauling the story of EGOLOGIC, adding to the logic of the game. Accidentally, we expanded the scope as well, so the scope for both writing and art increased as a result. Like always. So then we just crunched EGOLOGIC until the first week of October, and aiming to release it on September the 13th, but there was so much that we had to push that back to the first week of October. Yeah, so we just crunched EGOLOGIC until the first week of October. We first planned to release on the 13th of September, but there was just so much to do, so we pushed it back for a week. This was also one of the occasions where we set several deadlines for the actual release of the game. So we had like a production deadline and then release deadline, and was there an earlier deadline set just to check in?
I think in this case we knew that the production deadline wouldn't be the actual production deadline because there was so much to do.
It was so tight that we were glad in the end that we had put these two deadlines into our calendar, but we still had to delay the actual release by a week. I think compared to our projects in the past, I think we got better at managing this. So it's recommendable to have like a deadline which isn't the actual release, but much earlier than that, like at least I think a week, 2 weeks, or depending on the scope of the project. So you'll have time to actually play test what you did and check for any issues or add some extras. But nice to haves are always a kind of a trap. Be strict with your nice to haves.
In practice, these changes to the scope meant that we added a bunch of new scenes and expanded others that we had already planned. The endings were changed and adjusted many times to better fit the central themes that we wanted the game to convey. In general, our approach to writing this game was different to a previous project because this was the first time that we started with a core theme and idea in mind that we wanted to build the game around. It wasn't just about plot, but about thematic storytelling and to have the game work as a whole. The revisions and changes were a lot more drastic than just an editing pass or two. A bunch of writing was scrapped, especially the second half of the game went through multiple versions of the outline before there was even finished dialogue. Something else that we did differently with this project was how character sprites and expressions were implemented. We used a pretty neat feature from RenPy that basically links character images and characters in the script so that you can just say what expression they're supposed to use in the same line where you write the dialogue, which saves a lot of writing when you basically just have to add an additional word or two to say that this expression should be used for this line, then just write the whole command to show this character at this specific moment. Because this meant less effort to add the character images, that meant that we had more time to actually focus on the writing and could more easily change the script without having to also completely change how the characters are displayed in the game. On the flip side, it also meant that adding the expressions was practically the last thing I did for the game up until a few days before the release, and I think for some scenes even just a few hours before the release. The expressions weren't all implemented, and this was a bit of a struggle to get everything done in time, and also meant that there wasn't time to test everything and see everything in the game before we published the update.
Yeah, so about lots to do and not enough time to do that. We had more sprite variations in the end and more backgrounds than we initially planned to do, which meant that there was less time in general for special illustrations we've planned from the get-go. So these were pushed back as well on the list of priorities. And the long production time for writing and implementation also didn't leave us, or rather Felix, much time to work on the audio and the UI. So we had to re-evaluate our priorities for the release of the update, because we really didn't want to push the release date further back than the beginning of October. As Brassica was still on our schedule, it would consequently be pushed back as well, which would have been really unfortunate because Brassica had gained a lot of traction during the last months, and yeah, we wanted to deliver it to the lively audience that was waiting.
So from the middle of October until now, we first took a short post-crunch break for, I think, 2 weeks or so, just to recover. And then we took the EGOLOGIC and the release as an opportunity to try out something new with our social media strategy and made a calendar for October where we planned when we were going to do posts and what posts we were going to make, because before that it was kind of just post whenever we have something to post, and having the structure was kind of interesting because while it didn't really increase our sales magically, definitely saw a more constant reaction and got more follows, which is kind of obvious in hindsight because when you post more, you're obviously going to get more engagement. After that, we took part in HIO's Halloween sale. Then on November 7th, we released the first polishing update for EGOLOGIC with some additional audio and editing.
So what are we currently working on? So as BL Plus, we have returned to working on Brassica, and that would be our priority for the upcoming months. There's still a lot of writing and art to do for Act 3, so that's what we're going to do. And EGOLOGIC isn't done. EGOLOGIC is done. EGOLOGIC is finished at this time in terms of its story and the general content of it, but there's some polishing work left to do, like missing pieces of art assets and audio. We would work on that too, but more on the side of things. Another thing is that over the past couple months we have prepared a to-do today Steam release. The actual release really depends on how much time Felix has to prepare the version that is going to be uploaded there. You could look forward to a to-do today playable on Steam.
Aside from BL Plus work, we also have some personal work as well for me. That's work as a freelance composer for a few other visual novels, most of which haven't been announced yet. That takes some of my time as well.
I'm busy with a part-time job and freelancing as a designer and illustrator at the moment, so that's more of a focus on the financial side of things too, because we don't earn that much as game developers yet, hopefully in the future, but at the time we finance ourselves mostly by other means.
As Rohan said, Brassica is our main priority for now again, starting from November. Well, now we're working on Act 3. That will most likely be the longest act in the game so far, and probably in general, unless something happens to Acts 4 and 5, although we've already locked down the story pretty much, but, well...
Very loose locks, my friends.
So yeah, 3 is going to be a long one and hopefully exciting. In December and January we're going to take a break from BL Plus work again, because we kind of need a break, and also for personal reasons, and to focus more on our financial situation and our freelance work for a bit. So Act 3 will probably be released sometime in early spring. You can look forward to that then. And around the time in February or March we're also going to change our working situation a little and be working remotely from different cities.
So the both of us plan to move away, but at that same time the contract to use the offices here would end in by the end of January. Some big life changes are about to come for us next year. I think that was it. You can check out our social media links down below in the description box. And we also have a Patreon with a connected Discord. You can even enter the Discord without being a patron. Join us there and chat a little bit. While we're at it, thanks to our patrons. Thank you very much for donating and believing in our projects. Is there anything left to say? Say now.
I'll be silent forever.
Felix will be silent forever from now on. That's why I say my goodbyes to you. Thank you so much for watching and being interested in our work. Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay, so you might have noticed that I look really tired. Felix, are you tired?
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
Oh. See, in the shoujo manga and anime, was Satzbau. Oh Mann!
Ich habe auch schon Satzbau, wenn man Narrative Games macht.
Drinking break.
Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. Ich habe gerade keine Erinnerung dran, aber...
Du hast ja das von dem Release erzählt.
Oh.
Das wurde nämlich explizit irgendwie als Update genannt.
Was mache ich hier?
Wir sind beide leere Hüllen.
We are allowed. Okay. Vielleicht, es ist auch immer dieses wenn mir der Text einfällt und ich kann es sagen, aber ich schaue dann auf meinen Laptop und das sieht nicht gut aus und ich versuche halt die ganze Zeit dahin zu schauen, aber es ist halt so.
Ja, wir haben ja direkt nach dem Game Jam was hochgeladen.
Ja.
Aber was ist zwischen dem Game Jam und August passiert? Müssen wir jetzt unseren eigenen Devlog nochmal ansehen. Wir machen jetzt ein Reaction-Video zu unserem alten Devlog.